Hey everybody, in today's video we're going to be talking about the benefits of FaceTime. So as we know, generally speaking, post-COVID everybody has moved over to a hybrid working model. Working from home, remote working has been a preferred method of working. But is there value in FaceTime and going into the office? And if there is value in FaceTime, then what does that look like and why? So in today's video, we're going to be going through a couple of things. We're going to be identifying the elephant in the room, whether or not remote working is still of value, whether or not we should all be getting back into the office, and whether or not there's a misnomer or a myth around FaceTime and whether or not that is something of relevance today. So let's get into it. I think that this is going to continue to be a live topical issue. I think it really is slightly complex in the sense that there is no one size fits all for obvious reasons. I'm obviously talking to a global platform here, people of all genders, stages in their life, parents, non-parents, people with disabilities, people with long-term sicknesses, people with other inadvertent or unknown characteristics, traits, vulnerabilities, which may legitimize them working from home, and therefore, remote working is a formidable, genuine path for these individuals. I do not deny that. We've obviously got another camp of people where, COVID has basically set the tone, so they know that remote working is all they know, right? And it's not a luxury position because they don't have a comparator. Like when I started working, I had to go into the office 5 days a week. There was no half day, one day, remote working. It was 5 days fully in the office, and there was no negotiation around that, right? It was unusual if you didn't do that, and there was no conversation, that there was no alternative, basically. And obviously now it's kind of the inverse, which is, it's a little bit odd if we're asked to go into the office 5 days a week, or we definitely will question that. So I think, it remains a live topical discussion. It remains a fluid conversation. And I think it really just depends on the individual. It depends on the sector. It depends on the organisation. Banking, investment banking, we've heard of the JPMs, we've heard of the Goldman Sachses, we've heard of some fintech organisations, requiring 5 days in the office. I don't dispute that. I think it just depends on individuals, firms culture. And I do think there requires a little bit of testing rather than a kind of plaster and rip the plaster approach, i.e. I do think communicating with your workforce, whether that's questionnaires, whether that's asking people on the ground, what do you think, whether that's trialing, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days in the office and then seeing what the uptake is and the engagement is. I think that's important rather than a kind of cold, blunt implementation, 5 days in the office, let's go type thing. So I do think a more considered, nuanced approach is appropriate. And I do think, some form of pre-engagement with your workforce is of value rather than a kind of blunt implementable approach, just like kind of from the top down onwards. In terms of networking and remote working, and FaceTime, let's get onto that topic. Now, this is a very long-winded way of saying, like, I do think there is some value in terms of going into the office. Apart from, the terrible commute and getting ready and all of that sort of stuff. Like, I guess small talk in the office is a necessary skill. I've observed, and I think one of the benefits of going into the office is you hear conversations going on, you see people, how they interact, you hear small talk, you see senior executives interacting with other senior executives, and you realise, this is the way things are done here. And I've noticed that people at the top do make themselves visible and do make themselves available, right? Senior individuals are on the floor, are in the office, they're talking to each other, they're making themselves visibly available. They go and have chit chats, they go and have small talk conversations, and they literally go up to somebody's desk and say, what do you think? And I don't know about you, but like, I feel a bit embarrassed and like spotlight, like everybody's looking at me, everybody's hearing me, blah, blah, blah. And what I've realised about these people, they have kind of no filter. Like, they're so kind of redundant, and they're just so like oblivious to people and things around them. They're just so hyper focused on the outcome and the job at hand that it makes them successful. Like, they literally do not give a crap what other people think about them. And so visibility, FaceTime, small talk, making themselves available, I do think these are all really important skills. And I say that on purpose, i.e. it is a skill. I don't know about you, but small talk drains me. Like, I like having one-to-one engaging conversation where I'm learning, I'm benefiting, but that's a selfish point of view. And I do think there is a skill in terms of engaging with small talk. So I do think there is something to be said about FaceTime. And whilst I used to think it was a meritocratic environment and you just plugged away, and if you were good at your job, that was enough, as we all know, that's a myth. It is no longer being good at your job, technically good at your job, and just plugging away. Unfortunately, FaceTime, developing relationships, people liking you, and therefore visibility is really, really important. So I would say that it's a given that you're good at your job, and it is important to go to the office for FaceTime, for visibility, to talk to people, to develop small talk, and make your proverbial door open. And if you do want to go places, I do think you need to engage with senior people. You need to make small talk with them. You need to say, how was your weekend? What are you up to? Have you seen that movie? What did you think about this? What are you cooking for dinner tonight? Just really light-hearted, small conversation. But it means that when you do have a difficult conversation, it makes it easier, and you are at the forefront of their mind, and you'll become memorable. And then people think, yeah, I got to talk to her about that, or it's going to be easy to really break this difficult topic to her because I've had a conversation with her, I've developed a pre-existing relationship with her. And it doesn't need to be like, kind of small and intense. It can be like slow burn over the long term. So just put yourself out there, and I do think FaceTime and visibility is important. I think the other topic to raise is about networking. Again, I put out that, I was invited to do a podcast. Unfortunately, I had to decline. But I did have an introductory call with these amazing women, and networking is so important. And I think, to be honest, like, I'm such an introvert and it does drain me. But I do think that networking is really important. I think it's energizing to be surrounded by smart, clever, ambitious people, and it naturally has a positive effect. And if you network, you're just going to learn, right? You're going to learn about yourself. You're going to learn about how these people manage their time. You're going to learn about the conversations that they're interested in, and it's kind of like you're creating your own luck. You never know when you're going to need these people, when you're going to connect with them. You never know what you're going to learn from them. Even from that 20-minute introductory call that I had about this podcast, I learned so much about how we interact with each other, how to be more confident, how to rustle someone's feather, how to make people like you, how to collaborate effectively, what people are thinking about, what is the pulse on the ground, what is the hot topic at the moment in terms of, financial services, for example. So, rather than kind of like researching on LinkedIn and Lexology and all of these things in terms of, or the FCA's website in terms of topics, I learned that actually networking, speaking to people, getting on the phone, learning, saying, I don't know about that, can you tell me more? So much valuable than you sitting there in isolation just scrolling on the internet. So let me know what you think. I do think networking is important. I do think FaceTime is important. I do think visibility is important. Let me know your position in terms of remote working, whether or not you think there's still a place for remote working, what your views on coming into the office, and let me know what you think are the benefits of networking. All right, check you later. Bye.